Hello, hello.
We're not live.
You almost had me there. You're
Oh,
so
nice.
sneaky. You're so sneaky with it. I wouldn't have known if my thing usually lags, and I'm
Mm.
like 30 seconds in. I'm like, oh wait, we're live. But this one, I looked over, I saw the 0-1. I'm like, oh shit, Nathan's trying to play a trick on me.
Mm.
But I see everything.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's still sunlight.
You see the sunlight in my room. Yes.
We're in orbit, uh, because I just it's Last of Us night, so we have to do a little earlier. But yeah, we're here on episode number 86 of Hyperspace Hype, where we're reviewing a couple episodes of the Bad Batch. And Evan, I gotta say, I think this is working better watching them 2 episodes at a time.
I mean, I figured he would say that because last week I figured like let's just skip this week, and I said the same thing last time when we did. What was our last double episode? Um, well, technically the mid-season finale was double.
I think
Um,
we've been doing double episodes.
we've been doing double episodes actually. Yeah, ironically enough, I think 4 and 5. Yeah, 4 and 5 we did double episodes. Then 6 and 7 the mid-season finale, and then we did 8 and 9. I think are
9
these
and 10
two.
today.
9 and 10 today? Shit, never mind. I forget what I just said then. But yeah, we've been doing double episodes. It's going to be interesting because we are going to be doing, I want to do weekly stuff for The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
So I guess it could technically be the death of the double episodes unless one week we spend just on Mandalorian and one week spend 2 episodes about that. We'll figure it out. But since we'll be talking about Mando, we could just be talking about Bad Batch as well. I hate that they're coming out on the same day, Nathan. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. I'm like, do you want the Bad Batch to just die? Like, if I'm the producers of the Bad Batch, I'm like, just have us come out on Thursday or Tuesday or Friday or any other day of the week besides the Mandalorian.
It's arguably going to be like ramping up now since we're in the latter half of the season.
Exactly. I think it's going to be ramping up. Before we start, where the hell is Crosshair? I'm shocked about the lack of Crosshair this in season 2.
Crosshair died on the way back to his home planet.
I guess he did. What the hell happened?
He was like 32 rotations, not enough.
Exactly. After Admiral Rampart got thrown in prison, he didn't know what to do to himself.
Oh, that's right. He's out. So Crosshair, what are you doing?
It's ridiculous. I mean, I've been really liking this season. The only fine episodes I think were episodes like I like the racing one because it was very funny. The one after the racing one was just like with the big monster machine thing, like the Zepho rumored to be Zepho thing.
Yeah, the treasure hunt.
That was fine. But I like these 2 episodes back to back. I think they worked effectively more so back to back than just like one episode apart.
I think so. They basically have been like, or at least this was like a 2-part arc. Lost the ship, get the ship back.
Exactly. But you said episode 9 was the prior one last week's. Episode 9 was really good in terms of like processing emotions. Let's talk about that one first. Okay. And yeah, I think you said earlier, like these two work hand in hand. And I really like when episodes take their time to process grief of the previous incident here. This happened with one of my favorite episodes of Rebels. Rebels, an all-time Star Wars GOAT, just fantastic. One of my favorite episodes of Rebels is the death or the episode after Kanan is passed. Spoiler alert for Star Wars Rebels.
Can't say the spoiler after the spoiler.
I mean, I realized I said a big spoiler, and then I'm like, wait a second, it came out fucking what?
2017.
2017. We're near.
It's almost 6 years ago now.
6 years ago. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So if you haven't seen Rebels, it's on you. If you're watching Bad Batch but haven't watched Rebels, I don't get it. But what was I gonna say? I love the episode where it's just processing what happened with Kanan, where you get some good time with mourning with the whole crew individually. It's a really well-written episode, and I really liked how here Jennifer, the showrunner for Bad Batch, and I forget the other guy's name. The co-showrunners, they talked about having the Bad Batch not really discuss, but really handle the grief or like of what happened with Echo. Echo didn't die, but he left the crew. And he's been.
He might as well have. No.
He might as well have. For Omega's sake, yeah, right. So we got a big surprise in the mid-season finale of seeing Echo leave because he said, Commander Rex. He was doing a lot more without the galaxy, and they weren't doing enough, basically. And he really wanted to help out Rex. He wanted to help out, the little guy, help out throughout the galaxy individually. And Rex is, like as he said in the mid-season finale, he was spread thin. He kept having to call on the Bad Batch. There's a lot of people in the galaxy who need their help, and Echo took it upon himself to join Rex and the cause. Meanwhile, we get our next episode 9 here. The crew is again working for Sid, which doesn't come to too much of a surprise for me because they've been doing that. But I think I'm kind of be jumping around this episode a bit because I haven't watched it in a minute. But I think we're gonna be gearing up towards them leaving Sid, and I didn't think this was gonna happen. People called it like last season, like, oh, they got to leave Sid last season. But then season 2 started, and we're constantly doing new missions with Sid. But throughout this season, we have gotten a little bit more overt, not even subtle, but overt teases that Sid isn't with them. We get the racing episode where the guy who was, going against Sid basically said like, hey guys, watch your back. Sid cares more about themselves more than you guys. And then David left the whole racing arena. They helped out Sid, but they were like, we don't really believe you. And remember me, I was like, why are they so even talking about that? Like they're going to leave Sid when they're obviously not going to leave Sid. It felt weird for me in that episode. But now I think they really are trying to sow the seeds a bit more overtly. At the end of this episode, when they're looking for a ride, and they're like, hey, Sid, help us out. We're on a mission for you, and we lost our ship. What does Sid say, Nathan? Basically, like, I can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. In
3 days.
In 3 days. You're like, what the hell? It's like, hey, we came here for you. And she's like, basically just like, well, sorry, my hands are full. My hands are tied, basically. And she can't come. Yeah, she's too busy, and she can't come to rescue them. And it just didn't sit right with me because do they even mention it in the episode? Like, hey, we helped you out. Can you help us out? Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what convinces her. Originally, she's not doing it at all. So it's for that reason. I was of the viewpoint of like, oh no, she's all right. I believe Sid in her business is
Jesus Christ,
absolutely that wrapped up.
You're too forgiving.
Not for good reason, but I do believe she probably is in like a bunch of different deals, and she's like, fuck, I'm stuck.
Nathan gets in a car wreck, and I'm like, hey, Nathan, I'll be there in 2 days. Sorry, I'm at work right now.
I'll make it.
Or you can be like, oh, okay, Evan, I understand. No, what the hell?
I'll enter Rambo mode.
Gosh.
No, I'm not saying it's good, and honestly, I think there's a big theme by the end of the episode that like is to your point that like we should probably move on from Sid, especially. And this is a funny thing as I watched
episode 9, you said, or 10?
Yeah, because it's even like words that Tech shared with Omega in regards to. No, I'm sorry. It's at the end of episode 10, rather. When they liberate this place, realizing like, hey, this is a noble cause, and then also Tech points out that they're not the only ones in the galaxy who do this as well, which sowing the seeds of the rebellion.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to talk about that as well.
But Evan, I'm watching the episode, and lo and behold, once again, we're trying to get something of value. And we almost immediately lose that value. And this happened for like the 100th time. And I'm like, we should just stop. We should really just not. Like, it never works. We never get this untold riches.
That's a good point.
God damn it.
It's been much more blatant this season. I feel like we've been doing a lot more missions this season than last season, but I'm not sure anymore. We did a lot of missions last season too.
A lot of missions this season that have been resulting in dead ends.
Yeah. the Sereno mission in the first two episodes, just like we gotta get the treasures from Count Dooku's lair in Sereno.
Yeah.
Immediately goes to shit in spectacular fashion. And then episode 3 was a crosshair episode. Episode 4 was a racing episode. 5 was like we're trying to do the droid smuggling thing with Gunji, or I don't know what episode that was. And that also goes to shit when they had to rescue Gunji instead of doing their mission. It's like things just never go to plan. Oh, the Indiana Jones episode. It's like, hey, we're here for this thing. We got to put it back. It's like,
the big theme ultimately comes to, we're here for riches, but we leave having helped people, and it's like, well, maybe we should just like start with that.
Exactly, that's a good point. I think it's a big theme of these 2 episodes, is just in terms of helping people instead of just doing these missions for Sid, because they do end up helping people a lot. Like they helped out Gunji this week or this season. They didn't really liberate any part of Sereno, but they helped that one old man in Sereno. Like they helped individual people out in Sereno.
They got a new perspective on the separatists they used to fight.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, that as well. But speaking of that, like they're learning things of like character and emotional value rather than like the riches, rather than the physical attributes. You know what I mean? Like instead of the physical riches, gold, goods, they're learning these things that help build themselves up and like the wider galaxy as a whole. I think it's even more important. I think that's what the showrunners are trying to sell us, that they're learning more about themselves and how they can help each other. And hopefully once they learn how to help each other, they can learn to help others more effectively instead of just doing, like you said, doing missions and then going back and then be like, oh yeah, we helped. Like in episode 10, they're doing their mission, but then, oh yeah, by the same way, we also saved a whole group of people, kids. So, but yeah, episode 9, I really liked it. They're really struggling with or Omega really is struggling with like the absence of Crosshair, and other people are as well, just not as overtly as Omega.
Yeah. It's funny. Like it's not like overabundance that goes on in this episode. It's not like super action heavy or anything. It's just hell, most of the time I'm watching, I'm just like, damn, they've come so far in animation. Look at that shimmer. Look at it. Like,
oh yeah, the animation was gorgeous on this like remote desert planet. I forget what planet they were even on. I don't even matter. It didn't matter. But like they're in this remote planet and they're looking for what are they looking for? Ipsium, right?
Ipsium, not coaxium.
Which I think it's very funny. Like Ipsium is this material that if you crack too much at it, it explodes, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is very much a metaphor for what the team is going through right now. And this is very similar to what happened in Willow. Willow had like this mine episode where the characters of Willow and Kit were taken in by the trolls. They had to go to the mines of Skellen. And mythologically and psychologically, when you go into the mine is kind of like a symbol of somebody's subconscious. And the more you dig into it, the more you get to the truth of what's really emotionally affecting these characters. Basically, the mind of your subconscious. Like the deeper you go, the more you find about oneself. And if you want to learn more about this, please watch What the Force on YouTube. They're fantastic. They covered Willow a lot and Star Wars a lot as well. But instantly when I found out like, oh, Ipsium, oh, it's a mine, I'm like, oh, this is a clever way of really saying like, if you dig too deep in what's bothering the crew, you're going to get to at the heart of like what's really bugging Omega, what's really bugging the crew. And that is the absence of Echo. So this Ipsium is like, it's very much just a metaphor for the emotional buildup that is happening with Omega and the rest of the crew. And I thought that was very clever and something you don't really see in a lot of animated Star Wars. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, they're looking for this Ipsium for Sid, of course. And if you get too much of it, it explodes. So in the beginning of the episode, they're just, they find like this big cave. They park the ship out there. And what I loved here is just seeing Omega just like look at the outskirts, really just like sitting down and just like looking at the expanse of what's going on out there. And you can really see that she's just really processing what's going on. It just, even as a viewer, it just feels weird going from a group of like what 1, 2, like 6 to 5 or 5 to 4. It just seems much more distant or disassociated without Echo. It's crazy how one person can make a whole big difference.
Oh yeah, fuck, it is. It does feel so much smaller. I mean, not even taking into account that we already, we lost Crosshair from the jump, and now
That too, yeah.
it's going from 6 to 5 to 4. So how many more will we lose?
Yeah, now
Did you once say Wrecker would die last season?
I know. I totally thought. That's before I knew what kind of show we were getting. This is more of just like a pulpy, fun show of the week kind of thing.
There's a lot. So there's in terms of the dynamics of the team this episode, there's a lot of like infighting, a lot of agitation. Except like I'm so shocked Hunter has such like a cool head the entire time. It really does feel like the most like before, like in the season start, everything felt like very worried, but then now he's just like, all right, yeah, you stay watch.
It's funny you bring that up. Hunter has always been the kind of character that is always like worrying about Omega.
He seems early the most stressed.
Yeah, like at least like the most stressed about like I want this kid. Remember after the Gunji episode, he's like, I want this kid to have a future. Like I feel so bad that this kid has to grow up in an environment that is built upon war and running away and oppression, all that kind of stuff. He wants her to have a normal childhood. But then in this episode, with Omega grieving and them having lost a brother in a sense, you're right. He is kind of like the level head, so much so that later on in the episode, he's telling Tech like, "Hey, you messed up. You have to be the one to talk to Omega." Like he's really become like the big, dad of the group. So yeah, that was just really cool to see. But yeah, Wrecker also, it's interesting. Wrecker is the cause of why their ship got taken away in a sense. Like the show's kind of explaining how Tech is really the one blaming Wrecker. Wrecker was keeping watch with Omega, but then they called Omega over because she was small enough to get the Ipsium, right?
Yeah.
So then Wrecker was the only one outside.
Listen, either way, the ship was like out of view. I don't blame.
Yeah, it was weird because the ship was kind of out of view, but then I don't know. But I think he could have easily. I think the show was saying that he could have easily seen it if he was like focusing. But I think I don't blame Wrecker, of course. But what am I gonna say?
Tech does.
Tech definitely does. But it's two things. Where I think Wrecker is still subtly just processing the removal of Echo or the absence of Echo, where he's just like he's not at the top of his game because they lost a part of themselves in a sense. And then Tech's also just like a lot more blaming, aggressive, and just like he talks about it later on in the scene in the bottom of the ravine. But he's like he handles the emotions differently, and he's really going through. I think he was just lashing out at Wrecker instead of just really getting out what's bothering him.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it's just such funny contrast when I'm like, Hunter's here and he's just like, all right, well, our ship's gone. Let's start walking. It's like, then they get trapped in the cave. It's like, all right, well, let's just start moving the rocks. Just so passive.
Exactly.
But I do, I love the scene when, like, later when Tech does go to talk to Omega.
Wait, before that, let's talk about why Omega leaves in the first place.
Yes.
Because I think it was so interesting. So, yeah, they're walking along. The storm's catching up to them. Dust storm, straight out of like Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.
After they also survived the Lion King stampede.
Oh yeah, the what were those things called?
I don't think they had a name.
I don't even know what they're
given a name.
That stampede was gnarly.
We didn't have like an encyclopedia moment with Tech. We were just like, "Fuck, we're gonna die!" Like,
yeah, it was funny as hell. And then Tech blames Wrecker again because Wrecker's the one physically able to carry the whatever the Ipsium capsule. And then like when there's stampede, like I think he just drops it and just like hangs on the tree to kind of save himself, basically. Yeah. And Tech like blames Wrecker again, like, "Oh, it was your fault that the Ipsium's broken again." Because then the Ipsium, there's a stampede. They go hide, get carried by the storm, basically explodes, blocking them inside this new cave. and now they have to remove rocks to get outside. So when they're in this new cave, they screwed up basically, and Omega's really upset. Everybody's kind of upset at this point, just blaming each other.
Yeah.
And what does Tech say here? He's like, Omega's like, it's not the same anymore without Echo leaving, and Tech basically says, well, we were a team without Echo, and we'll be a team again.
He's like,
right?
Yeah, he's basically says, we were a team before Echo, we'll be a team after. Why are you so bothered? Like, he said it's so aggressive.
It was
like, oh my god!
I was like,
really
I was really taken aback by this.
I'm not used to Tech being this like passive aggressive.
Yeah, Bob. Again, it's all because they're missing a part of themselves. They're missing a part of what made them a unit. And yeah, that was really hurtful. Why? Because Omega feels like she's in the same position, right? Like they were a crew without Omega. Just substitute Omega for Echo there, and they'll be a team without her. That's basically how she's feeling in a sense. Like, hey, you were a team without me. You'll be a team. You're a team before me, and you'll be a team without me. Basically, what is she really contributing to the team? That's why she goes so hard in the paint to get the Ipsium. A scene later where she's like, "I'll do it myself because I feel like I need to contribute to the team." And this is a theme that we talked about in episode 1.
Yeah.
When during the Sereno mission, she felt like, "Hey, I gotta get the riches so that they don't think I'm useless." And that was spawned on because of what Echo said to Hunter or something that was taken out of context. So again, Echo's kind of like this whole ghost hanging over the episode here.
Yeah, I remember when we watched the first episode, she's like trying to reach for the treasure, imminent death below her. And I'm just like, oh my god, Indiana, let it go. And I was watching this episode and she wanted to get like that one last extraction from the wall. And I'm like, Indiana, let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah, but also remembering back to like the first couple episodes, that arc, Echo, Hunter is always like in support of Omega, but in like a fatherly way. But Echo was like a very like, he's not the father figure to her, but he respects her as an equal,
like a bigger brother.
And even just like was the one to give her the reassurance, like, we made the right choice by bringing you along to save you. But now he's gone, and like that one person that she had like a really good connection that way.
Good point. Yeah, like because they all care for Omega, but this season you're right. Echo was the one who verbally said like, we did not make the wrong choice saving you. I'm glad. Like, don't hear my words out of context. What I was trying to say in episode 1 was that like, we really made the right decision in saving you. You've made us a better family as a whole, basically. And that kind of wrapped up the whole emotional arc between Omega and Echo in the first 2 episodes. So yeah, you're right. So that was kind of wild. How the person that gave her that kind of gratitude and that purpose is now gone. So again, it's like, it's very interesting. The writers made a very smart choice in having Echo leave the group because it made for some great character work for Omega, who's always been a great character, who's always like kind of like water in a sense. Like she doesn't go with the flow, but she's always there's so many different variations of Omega, and she's always constantly evolving throughout the season, even though she's consistently somebody who always wants to do things for the better good. But yeah, that kind of hurt when Tech said like, we'll be a team without you, because again, it brings her right back to like, oh, I'm not really part of this family. If Echo can leave and they're not really bothered by it, if I leave, are they can be bothered if I leave too? Like, is anything really going to change here? So that really hit deep. So yeah, then we see Omega going to like kind of extract the Ipsium by herself. She kind of wanders off, and there's a huge like crevice full of Ipsium. So she dangerously goes down there, tries to do it herself. But then I like it when Hunter and Wrecker were like, yeah, Tech, you fucked up. I like how they have the emotional awareness, situational awareness to be like, yeah, you kind of like, that was a wrong thing to say. And Tech was like, what? I'm just stating the facts. And I really like how he kind of processes. He says it again later in the episode, but he processes things differently. So he didn't really take it as a dig at Omega. He was just, stating the facts. So, but stating the facts can also make somebody feel down and sad.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite tropes that I think is like especially prevalent in something like Star Trek, when it's like a person like Data or Spock who don't process emotions normally like most humans. So but they still have a like affection for like their crew. So like when they fuck up, and then they have to like come to realization and understanding of how emotions affect people, and it's great.
It was really great. So that was a very interesting scene. So now he's walking over to Omega, if I remember correctly. Do they have a bit of a talk before they get like sunken down into the?
They do.
Do you know what he says?
I'm blanking on the dialogue, but I'm pretty sure they were like coming to like an understanding of their situation. They were like on saying, but it was so funny because the way they were talking to each other was just so goddamn aggro, like on their tones on both sides. And I was like, oh my god, this isn't gonna help at all. Basically, Omega.
Wait, say it again. You kind of cut out there.
Omega just wants to like extract them, get things done right. Blow a hole in the wall, which Tech came to the same conclusion. And basically they get to the point where they're not like, we haven't had that final good talk in the water cave. So it's more so they're just like, all right, yeah, we'll work together because we have to get out of here. So let's just do this job real quick.
Exactly. And then that's when things get like, she falls down. And I like it when she hits the fan, she falls down into the water. Tech immediately like jumps in.
No hesitation,
which is so good.
You don't know how far down there that could be death. You don't care.
I know, it was scary. I was like, oh shit, where did she go?
Like, that's bottom. You don't know.
Yeah. Especially in a dark cave. Like I've worked in like a natural history museum. Like I've been to a lot of caves. So that's one of my bigger fears, is just like fall into the middle of a dark cave. Because in a dark cave, you can't see 2 feet ahead of you. So that was like super scary. Luckily, it's Star Wars, so nothing bad is going to happen to Omega. But yeah, they immediately fall down. Tech jumps in there with her, and how they do that day, like the rest of the crew is on their way to help them. Yeah. But before that happens, we get a fantastic scene between Tech and Omega, and a lot of people have really praised this scene because they liked it. I don't like diagnosing people, but like a lot of people were saying like they can get like autistic vibes from Tech in terms of like not being able to say the right thing or like processing their emotions in a different way. And they liked the words that Tech was saying here in terms of like, I understand what you're going through, and I apologize for the things I've said to you, but it's just that I process things in a different manner than you might. So even though my words might come across a certain way, don't make it like I'm trying to be mean to you or anything. It's just that I'm just, I'm different. I think Omega really takes that in and accepts what Tech is going through. And because Tech admits, like, maybe I've also been a bit bothered by Echo leaving. But yeah, because they both are, and they're really getting down to the heart of like what's really bothering them. And there's a beautiful scene, like the water's coming in from that one small hole. There's a beautiful look of like the ravine at the bottom of the waterfall. It was just a very stunning, and the Ipsium's lighting up the cavern. It was just a really stunning scene. I really liked it. And I love these like big, deep character moments between Tech and Omega. Tech, people have been saying it. He hasn't been like the most characterized character in season 1. But he was so he's getting so fleshed out throughout this entire season. I'm so happy with what they're doing with Tech and Echo throughout this season.
Absolutely. I mean, words out of my mouth. You really hit the nail on the head. There's not much more I could add. It really is just like a very like beautiful scene. The way the walls get broken down. It's just they're a family, and it's just deepening the bond.
Yeah, it was great. Because I just love it when characters strengthen their bond through like these one-on-one conversations, especially in Star Wars. We don't really get that a lot. Remember, I was asking for scenes like this in like Book of Boba Fett or Mando, where it's like, can these two characters can just sit by the fire, sit down, and talk about what's really going on. And we kind of got that in Boba Fett episode like 4 or 3 or whatever, when Boba and Fennec were just sitting by the fire talking about like why they do what they do, and the whole like trying to be more than just bounty hunters. And I like that scene a lot. And this scene kind of reminds me of similar other scenes in Star Wars where they're just like processing their emotions. And she was able to just bluntly ask Tech, like, why are you able to act so indifferent from Echo leaving? And Tech just says, I just process these emotions differently, but don't take it as like me being stoic or not caring. I do care. It's just I care in a different way than you do. And of course, at the same time, he's saying, I appreciate you, Omega. We're always going to appreciate you. You are really a part of this family. So it's solidifying themselves as a family unit. Oh, yeah. That's what I wanted to bring up, too. I wrote this in my review of it last week. They're really solidifying how they do process emotions. The Bad Batch aren't like these clones that have been programmed by Order 66. This brings it to a bigger theme in the entire season as a whole. Like episode 3, I keep bringing it up, but it was a beautiful episode. And Crosshair and Cody are talking about like, we're better than droids, right? Cody's even asking at the end of the episode, like, I'm able to make a decision because I'm not a droid. I can make these yes or no choices. I can make my own choices as a clone, as a human being, because I'm not a droid. That's why I can move away from this like good soldiers follow orders kind of thing. And that's when he like leaves, never to be seen again.
Also, like not just a droid that like shuts down. Like you have to live with them. The choices.
Yeah, exactly. Live with the choices, and that kind of coincides to what Omega, Echo, when the Bad Batch as a whole are going through. They're able to talk about these things. They're able to, in this cave scene, reaffirm that they're a family who process emotions because they're much more than just a pack of clones. They're much more than just people who just follow orders or whatever and just go through things willy-nilly. No, the absence of Echo does exemplify that they are processing these emotions. They are going through these things. They are able to make their own choices. They're not like everybody else. It really exemplifies why they're called like the Bad Batch in a sense. Not in a derogatory way, but just in a good way. Because like they're different from other people. And just like Cody, just like hopefully Crosshair, but just like Rex, everybody who's going against their programming, going against the Order 66 of it all, they are able to make their own choices. They are able to move forward, create their own like stories in this new crumbling society of the Empire growing because they're all different, because they're a family now. So that really sets them apart from everybody else, but also makes them similar to other people who are kind of like rebelling in this day and age. So it kind of connects to what's happening in the season as a whole and what happens in the next episode in terms of like, we're a family here. We're not all like using each other as what happens in the next episode. I really liked how they reaffirm how they're a family in this scene, how they're really close and they're never going to really let go of this bond. But speaking of choices, that also goes again to what we were saying at the beginning of the episode with them making the choice to hopefully leave Sid or move on past Sid. We know Sid deep down is a good person, I think, but I think she's not really part of like, no, I don't even want to say that. I don't want to say that she's not part of the family because Omega thinks so. And Omega usually isn't wrong. But in this sense, I think it's important to like talk with Sid or have some kind of confrontation with Sid where they move on and hopefully grow out of just using Sid. Similar to what I'm saying with the Mandalorian, like eventually you have to move away from the Armorer. The Armorer and Sid, they're not bad characters at all. No, they can do some heroic things, but there comes across a time in your life when you just have to move across these obstacles. And I think Sid is an obstacle for them. And I think the Armorer is an obstacle for them as well, where they're not bad people, but they're just obstacles in your life who are hindering your growth. And I think the Bad Batch can grow to helping people without the avenue of just trying to survive by using Sid or whatever. So that was very interesting. How they're not just soldiers, they are a family, and that's what makes them so unique and special. So I really like this whole scene a lot. And hopefully that can coincide with what's happening with Crosshair when we see him again. Hopefully next week. Next week's episode is called Turning Point. So hopefully it's a turning point in Crosshair's arc. Hopefully it's a turning point in the Bad Batch where they actually move away from things. I don't know. I'm just theorizing, but hopefully we get some more Crosshair because he's a fantastic character, and I don't want the season 2 to really like just only have an episode 3 and then finale or something.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping. But yeah, we can move across that. Eventually Wrecker Hunter finds them eventually. They get into the ravine. They're still kind of locked out though, but then they found out like, hey, there's a little bit of a
hole in the wall.
There's a hole in the wall. How did they get out? Did they throw the Ipsium at that, right?
They set it there, and then Tech fires a precise shot to cause an explosion in the wall.
Yeah. So it's good. Yeah, and Tech is the one to like really detonate it, which is cool. Again, Tech's really getting the spotlight here. He's willing to mine a lot of like their emotions, but also use the detonation to kind of like explode, and all of a sudden the light shines in on this dark crevice. Like it's very psychological. Like the light shining in. Once they finally resolve their emotions, finally the light can come on in. They can become better people as a whole. The light's kind of like peering through the darkness. Light
starts turning red, and Omega stabs Hunter.
Also, another great use of lighting in Star Wars. Light is always important in fiction and Star Wars and stuff like that. So I love it when people can like use that to their benefit. But
they fell all the way down inside the water, and I was like, oh fuck, it's the dark side cave from Mach 2.
I mean, that's another thing. Ryan Johnson's smart too in terms of like, what was the dark side cave used for, guys? It was used for Rey digging into her subconscious. What were the things that she feared the most? So similar to what Omega fears the most in terms of like her not being used for, her not being part of this family. I love it when people can really dig into that. But yeah, they make it outside into the light, and they realize, hey, their ships are still gone, but there's an abandoned town that we can use, hopefully, to call Sid. As we mentioned, Sid isn't coming anywhere close to them. It's going to take a couple of days. So they're going to go to the next town and hopefully find a way out. But that's the end of episode 9. But we move on to episode 10, titled
Temple of Doom.
Temple of Doom, which I totally called, by the way. Halfway through, I'm like, this is totally Temple of Doom. This is called Retrieval. But yeah, Omega really impressed me in this episode as well, by being a big beacon of positive possibilities, I should say, for the new character that we come across here. Do you remember his name, Nathan? Played by the great Yuri Lowenthal.
Yeah, I was about to, like, that's all I remember. I call him Yuri.
Yeah, I legit called him like Yuri in this episode.
Because I was like, I got halfway through and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I know that voice. I feel like I know that voice. And I'm like, got to the end, I'm like, is that Insomniac Spider-Man?
There we go. Kid named Benny. Played by Yuri Lowenthal. Also, Yuri voices one of the teenage minors when one of the two spies that spies on them in the garage later on in the episode says, "What are you doing?" It's like it was Yuri just in a raspier voice.
I love that.
Which is very funny. Like when the credits rolled, it said played by Yuri Lowenthal, Benny / minor number 1. I'm like, oh, okay.
Get some downtime on Spider-Man 2.
But this is really cool. So yeah, I really love this episode. It was a blast. Not as like emotionally effective as episode 9, but it's continuing that trend of the Bad Batch being a family and how that family influences the possibilities of what Benny could be going through, because it's very much so Temple of Doom, but also mixed in with like just capitalist greed in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
It was very funny. How they kind of like ruined capitalism in this episode and they turned into communism by the end. I loved it.
Tommy's looking around worried. Oh, you muted.
Sorry.
Oh, your mic's wrong.
Oh shit.
Oh no.
Let me fix it real quick.
He's in the airlock. Oh no.
Oh, but my fingers are connected.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So he's back.
Take a minute. But
Tommy.
Tommy likes capitalism. Just kidding. He hates capitalism now because he's communism. But Last of Us, Bad Batch, they're all connected, baby.
Communism not so bad? Question mark.
What? Huh? My life is a lie.
My life is a lie.
But it was great. So where do we begin here? We catch up with Benny having stolen the Havoc Marauder, and that's their ship, the Bad Batch's ship, Havoc Marauder. And he sees what's his name? Gunky? What's the
Gonky?
Gonky. There we go.
The Gonk droid.
The Gonk droid. Yeah, that makes sense. Gonky the Gonk droid, kind of like, where the hell you going? And Benny's like, oh, just.
I wonder if it's Dave.
Probably because Dave voiced
Chopper.
Chopper.
We got Chopper in Bad Batch last season.
Yeah. Wait, did we? Did we get Chopper last season?
Yeah, we did. With Hera.
Oh wow! I totally forgot about that. Yeah, in the Hera episodes.
How do you hear Chopper? You don't think Hera?
I love the Hera episodes. Chopper just did not come to mind. But yeah, Benny says, "Shut up, Gonky." He makes his way down into like this underground area. The shields let him in. He goes inside, and we immediately come across this bad guy named Mako, I think. Let me see.
Yeah.
A thug named Mako. Yeah, who's kind of employing
the Goblin King from The Hobbit.
Sure.
Which, those vibes I was getting, and I was just like, oh my god, it's the third fucking Hobbit reference I've made in the show this season.
I wish I remembered The Hobbit, because I cannot tell you who the hell the Goblin King is.
We'll commentary one day.
Will we?
It's going to be the one thing Carson will come back for.
The Hobbit, really? Oh my god.
Oh, you think we're going to just do The Hobbit and not Lord of the Rings?
Those movies are 3 hours, Nathan.
So it was Endgame. We'll get that too.
Will we?
We'll do the Batman one day. We'll do them all, baby.
That's different.
We'll watch Ben-Hur. We'll watch Gone with the Wind.
I wish.
Watch that 4-hour Cleopatra movie.
Jeez. But yeah, so Mako has Benny under his control, but he's kind of like this fake malevolent, or not malevolent. He is a malevolent ruler, but he's not coming across as malevolent. He's coming across as like, hey, I'm doing what's best for you. Thanks for bringing me this.
I care about
shit.
you.
Yeah, I care about you guys so much. And Benny kind of has like, what do you call it? Stockholm syndrome in a sense, where he's basically saying like, oh, maybe I can earn top earner. Like they're having these crazy ideals for things that are just never going to happen. But we're watching that character kind of like not even process it, but he's just saying like, if I can sell the ship, I can be the top earner. If I do this, I can be the top earner. Yeah. But he's not that bad of a guy. He kind of saved us after like everybody else left, and he's kind of been he'd been giving us extra shifts and all, but like we've all had to make sacrifices. I'm like,
there was a line where it was like, oh yeah, they had to cut the pay just to keep the mines open, but hey, at least we still have work. It's like, oh no,
that's not it, fam. And
you're a child.
It's cutting a little bit too close to home. Like I can't relate to any of it, but like it is what happens in capitalist areas where it's like, hey, we're gonna cut the pay. It happens in Hollywood a lot too. It's like we're gonna cut the pay on these workers, but hey, at least they still have work. And where else are they gonna go, basically? And it's kind of like where Mako is saying, like, where else you guys are gonna go? This is your home. You guys have to stay here. So they're forced to stay here, but even though they're like living in this competitive environment, again, in capitalist, which is always competitive market.
Yeah.
So it feels icky.
It's so bad, Bob. There's so many instances, like just in regards to the food. I want to talk about that. Like when Benny's flying the ship, he finds like an old dusty ration bar on the floor, and he like wipes off and devours it. When he asks for water, Mako fucking chugs most of it and gives him like one sip. And even like in the scene with like the top earner, it's so fucked because at first you establish that the dude Mako, he's fucking pigging out in his quarters,
which was disgusting.
Disgusting. And I was watching and I was like, all right, if you're gonna be gluttonous, at least don't eat fucking like soup or whatever like from the side. Like who fucking eats like that? That's
It
weird.
was soup, and then you just eat things by the hand.
I know he had like multiple food around, but like motherfucking lean, like
Yeah, and
he's
he had to
spilling
like
shit, being
shit
reckless.
things. It was disgusting. And then like somebody called for him. They're like, "Oh, they can wait. Like I'm just eating. I'm sitting here eating." I'm just like, "Oh my god."
But
It
then
was
the motherfucker walks out and he's like, "All right, top earner, here you go," and he gives him a bowl, and he just fucking devours it because he probably hasn't eaten in days. And then there was the fucking next thing he does is just like, well, rations are real low.
yeah. You guys can. They have to share like one bowl. That was just
one bowl, not even full.
that was haunting. I'm like, this was some Spirited Away shit. Like it felt very ill and disgusting, and not just from like the food perspective, but just like what these young children are going through. This season alone, like between the whole Gunji thing and what's happening here, a lot of these kids are just suffering, not being able to be just normal kids. And it was kind of haunting seeing like, hunters say like, man, it sucks how Omega just can't be a normal child during that Gunji at the end of the Wookiee episode. And here again, we come across children who are just struggling. I'm not saying this is what could have happened to Omega, but it is a big reflection on like how children like Omega are going through terrible things during this period in time. Even though they might not be the Empire, they're still really bad. There's still people who are, and I think this episode is really kind of saying as a whole, how even though there isn't an Empire, there are always going to be factions of people who are willing to take advantage of other people during this like tumultuous, uneven time in the galaxy. There's going to be pockets of people who are going to take advantage of younger people, weaker people, feeble people who can just not rebel against them under the right cause or under the right points or whatever. And people like Mako are just going to take advantage of them, unfortunately. And you hate to see it, but that's what happens. Like, again, even though they're not the Empire, there are still bad people in the world. But I love what Tex says at the end of the episode, how that may be true. People are always going to take advantage of other people, but there are always going to be people like us to bring light and to bring happiness and to help fix that however way we can. So I liked what Tex said at the end there, how like there are a lot of bad people in the world, but there are a lot of good people as well, which I think sets up the bigger theme of the season in terms of the crew finally moving away and doing things out of the good of their hearts instead of just, doing things for Sid and along the way saving a couple of children too. Just like, me and Nathan have been saying, Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, Indy was there for the Chintamani Stone. I just made that up. Is that right? Chintamani Stone? That sounds right.
It was a stone.
It was a stone. He's there for the treasure. He's there for the stones. But along the way, he gets mind controlled, and then he gets back. But then he ends up saving these impoverished, people in the region, these slaves. He ends up helping save them and just causes a whole revolution in a sense by really dismantling their power system, mostly by death. But eventually they do go against the bad people, and then Indy helps up saving these younger generation, which just makes Temple of Doom so great. Like he comes in, saves the younger generation, which was just getting taken advantage of by these cult. And I like to hear where the crew ends up saving this younger generation. They ended up changing the power system within that community, and the kids don't leave, which is very cool. The kids stay. And they end up changing the whole power system. But I'm moving ahead a little bit. I love that ending of this episode. But some of the funnier moments from this episode really came from when the Bad Batch took Benny. So towards the beginning of the episode, once Benny like delivers a ship to Mako, then he goes back, to his home or whatever. And it's funny because the inside is full of like, it's not great. It's a mine, basically. It's a mining colony. But above it, they're not living too hot either, right? They're like in a what do you want to call it? Like these shanty towns where like the homes aren't great at all. It's not really it's not really good living space, living material. But while they're fixing the ship, before that, the reason that they're there is because Tex or Omega says they can just track Gonki. And that's how they got there. They tracked Gonki to this mining colony. They're there at the mining colony, and that's when they run into Benny. And they're quickly like, "Hey, Benny, what did you do with our ship?" Benny tries to lie his way out, but then he's kind of stuck with them for the remainder of the episode. And I just love the whole Benny and their interactions. And that's when I really said you can really see the whole way that he's trying to treating Mako. He's treating Mako as like this guy, like this benevolent leader. Like, oh, he's so good. Oh, like I could become top earner. And the Bad Batch are kind of looking at him like instantly sus. So like, this Mako guy doesn't sound that great. I don't think he's really there to help you. But Benny's constantly there defending him, defending their situation, their way of life. Yeah. Which is kind of sad. What happened after that? Did they make their way down there? Oh wait, did I skip over the Mission Impossible scene? Because they had to get through the heat stack, right?
Yes. I think that's essentially how they get in.
Let me see here. Yeah, they got to go through the central tower. The central tower / the heat stack, which is kind of funny. Very much Mission Impossible. 60 seconds to get down there. One of the more riveting scenes. I liked how the camera turned when Hunter kind of like went 90 degrees down the ledge, defeated like the robot sentry guard there. Yeah. And then just kicked it. Rest in peace, droid.
Although I felt like he was on the wall for a while. I was like, you have enough time?
It was interesting because I'm legit. I was counting down with them, and I liked how the episode really, because in some shows it's like 5, 4, wait like 10 more seconds. Yeah, 4, 3. Like, come on, this was way longer than 5 seconds. But in this episode, I counted, and it was pretty accurate. Hunter managed to do all of that within the span of like 2 seconds, coming down, stunning the droid, pushing it back, nearly getting burnt to a crisp. It was very clean and fluid. I really liked it. Yeah. But yeah, they get down there. Hunter, what is going to happen? Yeah, Hunter, Wrecker, and Tech make it to the garage with Omega and Benny. They said we're going to stay here by the. We're going to stay here trying to fix the ship because the ship does not have a hyperdrive, right?
Yeah, the hyperdrive was taken out, and immediately when they said that, I was like, "Fuck, man!" I was like, "That doesn't sound like an easy fix at all."
Yeah, so it was pretty bad. And then, so while they're fixing the hyperdrive, Omega is taken in by Benny reluctantly because he wants to leave again. And they're on the way to the central tower in order to open like the gates, because like the gates have a what's it called, ray shield. They're ray shielded. So even if they get the hyperdrive, they wouldn't be able to leave because their thing is ray shielded anyway. So the whole community is blocked in. So they have to go down there, open up the ray shields, or go up there, open up the ray shields, and then they'll be able to leave. But along the way, again, as I mentioned, Omega's learning more and more about this place, and she's coming to see that, like, yeah, this guy isn't living the most happy life. He takes Omega just willing to give him a ration bar. He takes it willingly. He's even surprised how much the Bad Batch are treating Omega as one and part of the team, right? It's kind of interesting.
Are we the baddies?
It's kind of interesting because like the guy's like, oh wow, they're really you're really part of the crew, because he's a child just like her, and he figures like, hey, there's a kind of a hierarchy, but there's no hierarchy in the Bad Batch. As we mentioned in episode 9, they're really reaffirming themselves to be a family. So Benny's kind of like not familiar with that. He's not used to this community being a family. He's used to this community being a competitive workforce kind of area. So he's kind of like new to all this. And again, at the same time, Omega's learning like, yeah, that Mako guy, not a great leader. And you can see she's kind of making him not rethink his ways, but when they get to the central tower, he's kind of like seeing her in a new light. He's seeing her position and thinking of like of what I mentioned earlier, the positive possibilities of what could happen between Benny and his community. Was pretty interesting. But unfortunately, he does press the green button when they get up there, And instantly, I'm like,
I think he pressed
oh,
it.
God.
I think he pressed it before he got that new perspective.
For sure, yeah, he was getting that perspective afterwards, but totally during this whole journey to the tower, I'm like, oh, he's definitely going to betray her, but then he's going to see her in a new light, or he's going to see, he's going to see her and the crew in a new light, gain that new perspective, but it's going to be too late, and that's exactly what happens. But also we learned something important, right? One of
the Death Star is being built now.
Yeah, the Death Star being built. Oh wait, that reminds me of so many things. I want to talk about how this compares to the prison episodes of Andor as well, because it was very similar. Prior to that, I was going to say Omega comes across the data behind Mako. What was it called? It was kind of like, Mako's reasoning for not giving them enough money or giving them longer hours. What was it again? It was like he had a so the Ipsium's running dry, I think he said, right? Like the Ipsium's running dry. Like there's less Ipsium,
or that it was I think maybe like corroded. So it was like less like potent, but it's like stronger than ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like
charts.
Mako was saying, "Hey, our Ipsium's eroded. It's not the best Ipsium, so that's why we have to work longer shifts. And that's why
work harder.
We're not getting paid as much." But then they realized, hey, it's just Mako the one being paid. But yeah, so Omega's looking at the reading like, hey, this guy is lying to you, and that's when Benny looks at it. He's like, this must be a mistake, and boom, barges in.
Guy like this lying to me?
Yeah.
What?
I can't possibly be that, right? So it was really funny. So Mako comes in after that realization, and kind of arrest Benny or arrest Omega. And even when he praises Benny, he doesn't say, "Thank you, Mako," or "Thank you, Benny. You're now going to be the top earner."
There's the position of top earner is definitely in your future.
Yes, yeah, he says in your future. I'm like,
bitch!
Oh my god! Like, Benny gave you the ship. He gave you Omega. Two not great things, but great. Those should help him be the top earner. But then again, he's like, everything's constantly out of his reach, which is like what's always going to happen. And yeah, I guess I'll go to it now. Like, this is very similar to the Andor prison system, or just any prison system, where like everything's always out of your reach, right? Where it's like, for Andy Serkis's character, forget his name now, but he kept saying, like, he kept looking at that number, the number of his exit, his sentence. That was his thing that he kept trying to get. Compare that number to Benny's top earner status. These two entities, these two things are constantly going to be out of reach, because A, you're never going to be top earner, and B, he was never going to leave. It's like these two things are always going to be out of reach for these people. And in the prison system, it took an outside person, Omega/Andor, to come in and really shape or shake your perspective, and be like, hey, these guys are not being good to you. And even though Andy Serkis knew, like, of course, the people in jail aren't being good to me. They're not great people, but I have to sit in this system and just ride this system until I can leave. Yeah. A little bit different from what's going on here in Bad Batch, where Benny is, in a sense, he doesn't realize that Mako's being bad to him. He's kind of drinking the tea. But at the same point, Benny is riding that system of competitiveness with the other children. I think there's another kid named Drake who ended up being the top earner during that soup scene. So yeah, like they're in this system that is constantly going to be out of reach for them, that is constantly taking advantage of them, and is constantly warping their perspective. The people in the prison, they weren't like stormtroopers. They weren't like the Empire, but they were periphery, right? They were periphery of it. They were part of the prison system of the Empire. And sitting here in the Bad Batch, they might not be like part of the Empire either, but they're still taking advantage of a group of people in a dire circumstance. And it might as well have been a prison, a working prison for Benny and the younger kids. So I just like that whole Andor Bad Batch comparison. It's been going on a lot throughout this season. But yeah, so Benny betrays Omega, unfortunately. At the same time, spies come across Hunter and Wrecker. What do they do with the spies? I think the spies see them and they run away. I think.
Yeah, I think they try to catch him.
They try to catch him or whatever. Also, again, one of the spies played by Yuri Lowenthal. Very funny. And then either way, shit hits the fan towards the end of the episode when they have their eyes. They're on a bridge, just like Temple of Doom. This is the crossing. This is the cross point of the episode, the midpoint of the episode.
I was sitting there. I was like, please let the kids like cut the bridge or something.
I was like, cut the rope. We gotta cut the rope, Dr. Jones. You better hold on. I love Temple of Doom so much. But no, bridge doesn't fall. But what does fall is Mako's status, because instantly, Hunter has his gun pointed on Mako. The whole Bad Batch do, and it was funny because they're like, "Hey, even if you try and shoot me, this whole place is volatile ipsium. If you shoot me, the whole place is gonna explode." And Wrecker immediately was like, "We're not gonna miss.
We don't miss.
We don't miss." I loved it. I was like
so hard.
It was so cool. I love this crew. But yeah, but other kids come out and they lower the guns because Omega's like at the edge. It's like, oh, lower your guns because of Omega. But the kids come out. Drake, one of the main leaders of the group of kids, comes out and he has in his hands the reading about the ipsium. He's like, tell me this isn't true. And that's when it's all revealed. And yeah, Mako had been playing them, and he immediately was like, so I think, does he go into like, he doesn't even apologize, right? He just goes into saying just like, you guys have nowhere else to go, right? Something along those lines.
Yeah, more so like some type of blackmail, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, you guys need me, kind of blackmailing.
What are you going to do without me?
Exactly.
I mean, we will without you.
Exactly. So that was very funny. So yeah, the kids kind of like, again, take charge. It's a great rebellion. Really missed my Stormtrooper Rebellion episode 9, but be gone. Yeah, we move.
And Omega's gonna get thrown off.
Oh, and it's such a great scene.
She's like, "You're going with me, bitch."
Yeah. Who did she take? It was just a random person, right?
A droid.
It was a droid. Yeah. And then at the same time, Hunter like fires the wire, catches her in mid-flight.
Yeah, Omega puts her arm out. I love Fast and Furious.
I was thinking of like I don't know why, but I thought of like Dick Grayson, like kind of like the Nightwing, when they were in the circus kind of thing.
Oh no, that's not a good ending.
That wasn't a good ending at all for his parents, at least. But yeah, I thought of like the trapeze thing in Bad Batch or in the Batman. But yeah, Fast and Furious also works as well. Oh, there they go. But I'll continue talking. So yeah, it was a very fantastic save and execution by Hunter. Hunter always gets the best scenes in these episodes. I love it so much. But yeah, so Hunter saves Omega, and beyond saving Omega, they end up saving this crew and this crew of young children as a whole. This young group of children who can be looked at as the younger generation in a sense. This competitive mindset that they had under Mako is kind of gone. I skipped over. The kids are so kind-hearted. They even try to save Mako. Mako's at the edge. Benny is there to try and save him. But then Mako, again, tries to drag him down with them. He can't reconcile with his new position as somebody who's not in a position of authority. So he tries to take down, Benny with him. Of course, does not work. He falls down to his death, which again goes into one of the main topics of Star Wars and in general, greed. People who fight for greed, selfishness. That's a path towards the dark side. And even though these guys might not be Sith or part of the dark side of the Force in general, this idea of greed and selfishness does end up, it's a shortcut to death, basically, and to a darker path in general. And even though the kids try to give Mako new life, in Another Sense Redemption, he denies it, and he gets sent to death, basically. So it was a big scene. It was a great scene for Benny and them just trying to be like, we're trying to save you. We're trying to give you a new lease on life. But, some people they can't really accept that position of inferiority, a weakness. So bye-bye, Mako. Not going to miss you. You see this a lot with the Empire, too, where they like being in the position of authority and they can't imagine anything else differently. So they die as well. So it was not very sad scene for Mako, but he had to go. But in general, the Bad Batch ends up destroying this competitive mindset. And they ask Drake, what's next? And they're like, we're going to stay here. And we're going to share the profits. Hello. Sounds a lot like communism to me, but again, not bad. What makes it bad, is like, of course, the institutions and the leaders, etc. But with the leaders now being gone, they all, share the profits, make a good profit by mining this Ipsium, which is still valuable throughout the galaxy. So, they're going to be living their best life as a group, as a family, instead of this competitive group of children. They're going to be more of a family now. Because none of them hated each other. They just were part of this competitive mindset, which breeds instability.
Yeah.
And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier on in the discussion, Tech and Omega are basically saying how they helped out these people, and how even though there's always going to be people to take advantage of, there's always going to be people like us. We're not the only groups of people in the world, in the galaxy, who are willing to help out each other. Basically reassuring Omega, like, hey, there's always going to be people like us, hashtag the rebellion, to save people, to fight for the little guy, to fight for the little communities who are not thriving. Hopefully that sends them, the Bad Batch on a, crossroads of destiny per se. So then they can start helping out people, like we've been saying throughout this whole podcast.
Yeah.
So, and that was the end of the episode. 2 very good episodes that really exemplify the Bad Batch as a team, as a unit. They're able to process their emotions and help out other people in need as well. So I really had fun. Yuri Lowenthal was a great voice actor. It was very fun watching him here. Can't wait to see him in Spider-Man 2 later this year.
I gotta get PS5.
You sure do.
I heard. Can you share play with me?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll be definitely sharing clips. I could stream some of that too. My cup of tea streams.
I need to do a playthrough of Miles.
Oh yeah, the Miles one's so much fun. The Miles gameplay is leagues better than the other one.
Wouldn't know.
Because Miles is like less gadgets. The first one was more so, hey, there's a cool gadget for Peter Parker to use. Miles is like, let me just use my electric punch and my invisibility to just kill people.
Yeah, people be flying up in the sky. Like, that's fun.
It was amazing.
Again, I have this game. I just got to pop it in.
Why have you not played it?
The commitment of the I know it's not a long campaign, but I just played Uncharted 3.
I know, yeah, there's no excuse.
All right, what do you want me to do? You want me to play Miles or you want me to play Uncharted 4?
Oh, Uncharted 4 easily. That's one of the best games. Decade. Masterpiece, 10 out of 10, peak. But before we leave for this podcast, I want to talk about what's coming out in 3 days. So moving forward, we will be doing podcast episodes for every single Mandalorian episode. By the way, what episode are we on right now? What episode of Hyperspace Hype is this?
86.
86. Really? Are we at 86? Yeah. One of my favorite anime of all time, 86? That's fantastic. I was just reading that last night. Okay. 86. Watch 86, everybody. It's fantastic anime on Crunchyroll. So what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Mandalorian's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be doing episodes every day prior to Mandalorian Season 3 coming out, which I'm excited for. I think this has the potential to be a very good character-driven season. But before we dive into that, there have been some comments from Dave and from John, who I think I'm starting to believe, Nathan.
We're on first name basis with Dave and John.
Yeah, Dave, fuck Favreau, fuck Filoni. It's John and Dave.
Damn. Thank you, Filoni, for the Bad Batch.
The 2008 duo.
Back on Iron Man.
And
Clone Wars.
And Clone Wars.
Excellent year.
But they have been coming out with these comments, man. Not the best comments in the world, not the most reassuring comments in the world.
Well, let's see here.
Let's break this down here. So, actually, before we dive into the ones that got people into tipsy last week, there was from 2 weeks ago from Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. When did this one come out? This came out Valentine's Day on the 14th. Jesus Christ, it's 26. But so he says, why Grogu and the Mandalorian had to reunite in the Book of Boba Fett. Basically, we couldn't just hit a hard reset. So let's see what he says here. It's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds for people who may not have seen the Book of Boba Fett. But I think the Book of Boba Fett offered time to pass. You saw what Mando was like without Baby Yoda, and we saw what Grogu was like without the Mandalorian, and neither of them were doing so good. So them coming back together was a really good plot point that allows us to jump back into season 3 while maintaining that central relationship. Oof. Neck and Trade. It's interesting, Bob. I think the main thing that's bugging me is that there's a big difference between narrative time and the time when the audience is visually watching these episodes. Because for us, Mando season 2 came out, they got separated. A year later, there was Book of Boba Fett. In one episode, they get reunited. Like one episode, you have Grogu and Baby Yoda on their separate episodes or separate journeys called The Mandalorian. The next episode, he leaves Luke. And then after that, Boba Fett season finale, they're reunited. Span of like 2 or 3 episodes, very short. And I just don't think that's enough time to pass. Like Favreau says right here, we offered time to pass. You saw what they were like without each other, and now they weren't doing so good. Yeah, first of all, they weren't doing so good in a separate show. Second of all, I want to see more of them not doing so good together. Like, we just saw him training with Luke, and Luke saying, Grogu knows more than I can teach him. It was good. It was solid stuff for Grogu, solid stuff for Mando. But it's like, I want to see the Mando do more than just have one killing mission on this really cool moon planet. And then go to the armorer and be like, oh, I failed. And like, you didn't really see Mando struggling outside of that one big action sequence. Like, I wanted more. I wanted like half the season of them apart. I wanted Mando to go on a personal journey. We know they're not doing so good apart, but we want to see that for a longer period of time.
A trial of the Darksaber, if you will.
A trial, basically, yeah. Not the kind of trial that we're going to be seeing Mando in season 3, where in this trial that we're seeing here is mostly just Mando being like, I failed, I took off my helmet for a good cause, so I got to do these things to, atone for my sins. We'll see how that gets played out. But, yeah, this whole, this way we can hit season 3 with the central relationship maintained. I'm like, no, I don't want this I don't want this central relationship to be maintained. I wanted them to be full of conflict, full of turmoil, and then grow so it feels earned, so it feels organic. This one just does not feel organic to me. Especially if you didn't watch Book of Boba Fett. I know they're part of the same book. I know it's Mandalorian 2.5. But I'm also tired of that argument too. I'm like, because at a point, you're either appealing to the people who are always on Twitter or who are big Star Wars fans, or you're appealing to the everyday audience. Yeah. And for me, my dad or my friends, because my dad doesn't watch Mandalorian, but my friends who watch Mando, they're not the biggest Star Wars fans. They're not the biggest Star Wars fans. They're not on Twitter constantly looking up how they're marketing Mandalorian and how they're marketing Book of Boba Fett. Scoops. They didn't know Mando was going to be called, or Book of Boba Fett was going to be called Mando 2.5. They didn't know that Mando was going to show up in Book of Boba Fett. They hope, but it's don't expect everybody to know how connected these shows are. And for John, I don't want them to force their connectivity in such a way that is ruining their central relationship.
Yeah, they even they officially the Star Wars account on YouTube officially uploaded a recap of both seasons of Mando and Book of Boba Fett, which I can totally see playing before the first episode of season 3.
Oh, 100%. Just to get people caught up. And because, again, you have to play to your regular audience. So by playing to your regular audience, knowing that we're going to get a recap, don't say like, oh, well, you guys should have been. I'm fine with The Mandalorian being a Book of Boba Fett because they were marketed together. But not everybody's paying attention to the marketing. Just outside of the marketing on a narrative level, I just didn't like how, regardless of them being on a separate show, I just don't like how quickly they handled it.
Okay,
I wanted it to be longer.
They say it's a part of the marketing, but I mean, like, if I'm talking like casually, like I know, like on Twitter, we're like, "Oh, cool! Here's a Mando poster set for Book of Boba Fett." Hey, cool. In my time up north, I was in the New York area, and I saw some marketing for Book of Boba Fett, and I'm telling you right now, it's just that one poster with Boba and Fennec. They're not marketing Mando like that. Like the general people of the public, I don't think they know. Even like the banners on Disney Plus, I don't think they know.
You don't think they know like how connected about Book of Boba Fett?
I don't think like if you're like on the outside and
you don't.
There's a Boba Fett show, you don't know that Mando's going to be in that. You don't know there's a journey set in there.
Exactly. Granted, like Boba Fett had like a post-credit scene in Mando.
That's a whole different thing because
that's about it. Though.
When I made my video for that, I got lucky that I just let the credits roll because I was just like, all right, the season's over. Let me enjoy the music. And then they're just having to be a scene because they've never done that. Lucasfilm has never done that.
They haven't.
And so I can also imagine a lot of people clicking off and missing that.
Exactly. Which I wouldn't blame them. So again, like us coming in with this central plot point in Mando season 2 of them like separating for it to be resolved in a completely different show and just plain and simple resolved so quickly in a different show, those two things just don't fit well for me. Just on a narrative level, just try and like, get the best character out of Mando, get the best good stuff out of Grogu. And even then, I was kind of on the page at the end of season 2 where I didn't want them to separate. Remember, I kept saying like, please don't separate. Show without it. There's no show without them. Even though I think, admittedly, for myself, I think I was thinking I wouldn't say I'm immature, but I'm just like, I wasn't thinking of all the narrative character potential that we could get by having them be separate. So once I realized, okay, they're really overtly gearing up for a separation, whether, our theories were like he was going to get taken at the end of season 2 or either way, we knew by the end of season 2 they were going to get separated one way or another. I was kind of gearing myself up for that. And I'm like, okay, you know what? You guys told me. We're going to separate. I'm willing to change my mind about it. You know what? Mando's going to be able to do some great character work in season 3 alone. Grogu could get some interesting stuff with Luke Skywalker alone. Yeah. But again, that gets solved in a different show. And it's so, for me at least, it was very unfulfilling because it was resolved so quickly. Not saying that those scenes were bad. There were some solid scenes between Grogu and Luke. There was some solid scenes between the armor and Mando. But I just wanted it to last longer, for me at least, longer away.
It's weird because okay, if I'm gonna like have these scenes, because ultimately the stuff with I was gonna say like what's Grogu adding to Boba Fett in general, but he stops the Rancor. But you could obviously like write a new thing to stop the Rancor. But ultimately it felt weird because like if you're gonna have like these scenes with Grogu and Luke outside of a Mando show, I feel like it would have been better placed like in the Ahsoka series than this. Which I know we haven't gotten there yet, but Ahsoka's there just as well. And you can just if you want Mando and Book of Boba Fett, you could do that. You just have them like called in as like a surprise, like hey, like Fennec sends out a beacon, then boom, fucking here I am. And then like the whole armor stuff and like go send on that journey. That could have the Return of the Mandalorian episode could have just been the first episode of season 3 and kickstarting that journey, because it seems like that's what we're going to be doing anyhow, because he's going to the waters of Mandalore and all that.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to watch Mando season 3, take it in as a whole, and really see if we could have just set those things up prior to season 3. Because if season 3 is gonna be doing a lot of things, season 3 does seem to be doing a lot in terms of Mando culture, and there's a threat rising, we need to face it, and all these different things. It might have been too busy for them to do it in Mando season 3. But I figure again, it's the way you write it, and they wrote it in a way that they couldn't fit it into Mando season 3, and that's on them. You know what I mean? So it's like there was definitely a way, because I hate people being like, this thing happened with Luke Skywalker, where like there was no other option besides Luke Skywalker. Well, yeah, because that's how they wrote it. They wrote it so that there would be no other option besides Luke.
You can write a new Jedi.
Exactly. You can write it in a way that you're not expecting Luke, or you can expect somebody else and still be satisfied.
Yeah.
Because I think by the end of season 2, their only other option had to be Luke, given the narrative and given where things were going.
Cameron Monaghan, let's go.
Because any other character would have been disappointing to see. Luke, even though I wasn't really excited to see Luke as a watcher, it made sense. I get it. Because they were literally building towards that. He was the only Jedi. Luke's the only Jedi. Blah blah blah. Yeah, it's the same way here, where it's like they wrote it in the sense that where they made Mando season 3 is so jam packed that they couldn't have season 3 start off with their ancestral relationship not really formed or not really together yet. So we shall see. There was another quote from Dave Filoni a couple weeks ago as well, saying like, I don't want things to come to a perfect ending. This kind of goes into what I'm going to talk about next as well. Dave doesn't really like perfect endings. He likes, continuous storytelling, he says. There's a big question at the end of Mando season 2. What will Mando do next? Is that relationship over? ? In life, things don't always come to a perfect ending, Filoni says. I think things can continue on. Your adventure continues every day. I used to think about it with Clone Wars all the time. When is the battle over? When is the struggle over? Because it culminates in Revenge of the Sith, but that can't be the ending for that show, even though that's the ending of that era. That took a whole while to figure things out. And that made sense. Like, Revenge of the Sith ends, Clone Wars season 6, but there's still a separate whole season that takes place, season 7. So that made sense for that. So yeah, in general, he says, in a lot of what I've done, I don't like hard endings. I've read a lot of books and series and then thinking, oh, there's another book that keeps on going. It's always sad for me when an adventure ends and characters are seemingly done with their journey. And there's going to be things for to come in Mando season 4, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, that coincides with the journey being far from over. So it kind of goes in what we were saying, like the whole big thread that Kathleen Kennedy teased a couple years ago. That's still coming with Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, Mando season 4. But I think Mando season 3 hopefully is going to be more Mando focused instead of all world building focused, which is kind of like why I didn't really like season 2 so much, because it was setting up Ahsoka, it was setting up Boba Fett, it was setting up Luke. Like it was doing all these things instead of focusing just on Mando and Grogu. So hopefully season 3 can rectify that. But it's also interesting that Filoni doesn't like these hard endings for characters, because I feel the same way too. Like, Indiana Jones, going back to that reservoir. What's the last one? Last Crusade isn't a hard closing for Indy. They're literally right off into the sunset. So as a viewer, you can imagine, the very next day, Indy gets into another adventure. If you know it's the end of the trilogy, it's not the end of Indy's adventure. Yeah,
even if you go to Crystal Skull, we end with Indy in a wedding, but his son is seemingly going to pick up the hat, and he's like, no, I'm still in.
Exactly. Even Return of the Jedi, it wasn't really a hard ending.
Just a party.
It was just a party, and then as a viewer, you can theorize, what happens next with Luke, Leia, and Han? I wonder what happens next. So
there's so many books.
there's so many ideas. There's so many possibilities. So I get where Filoni's coming from there. I'm just kind of worried because in terms of a character perspective, hopefully they're thinking about, though, even though Mando's not having a hard ending, hopefully you're thinking about where you're going to lead Mando character-wise, in terms of arc level. And hopefully, I think I have faith that he does, because, Ahsoka had a great arc throughout the Clone Wars, especially in that final season. Rex did, Anakin and Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan did as well. So hopefully he's thinking about character arcs. Rebels as well. Rebels is basically Filoni's baby more so than Clone Wars. And, I love Rebels to death. And I think the characters really did have excellent arcs leading up to the finale. It does kind of bug me, though, retrospectively, that the ending of Rebels is very, as he says here, in terms of what he likes in terms of endings, it's not the most finite ending. It's very inconclusive. We lose Ezra, and the audience is left wondering, Where did Ezra go? Hopefully Ahsoka and Sabine can find him. But now for that to be solved in a different show, that kind of ruins the ending of Rebels for me. Just in terms of like, I wanted to see it continued in that certain format, and I don't know how it's really going to end or continue on. I guess it's more of a wait and see kind of thing.
For sure.
But yeah, we're going to see how Mando ends. It's just interesting that Filoni likes these open endings. So you can already, we're only 3 seasons deep in Mando, but you can kind of already think about like what kind of ending we're going to get with Mando and Grogu.
Sure.
Because I've always been thinking like maybe he just hangs up the hat, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just continues being Mando and Grogu. Maybe the season 6 can end with them just, finishing their mission, but having other missions possible in the future.
Yeah, I don't know if they're gonna like finish with it just like Din going on more odd jobs, or if it's leading to potentially him becoming a ruler of Mandalore. I don't know where they're gonna go. The whole Darksaber angle. I don't know how they're handling Bo-Katan's journey going forward. I'm excited to see that though.
Yeah. But lastly, there's been some quotes here which got people really in a tipsy about this week in terms of ending for Mandalorian specifically. Let's see here. I'm trying to look for the exact quote. I cannot find it. Let me scroll up.
12 seasons.
Yeah, basically he's saying, fuck it, I'll look for it later. He is saying how they haven't really thought of an ending yet for the Mandalorian. Plain and simple. They haven't really thought of an ending yet for the Mandalorian. They didn't really say this, but I'm thinking they're just thinking it one season at a time. And I tweeted out like, is this a threat? Because I'm like, oh boy, I can't imagine just like 7 seasons of the Mandalorian. I like the show a lot, but like, me, I like seasons with conclusive endings. And a lot of people have been refuting this, saying like, Jesse Armstrong, the creator of Succession, announced recently that Succession season 4 is going to be the final season. Prior to that, though, he did say like, I didn't know whether Succession season 4 was going to be the end or not. I always had meetings leading up to the filming of season 4, like whether it's going to be leading up to the writing at least. Yeah. Leading up to the writing of season 4, he didn't know whether it was going to be the end or not. And that makes sense. But I think there's a difference between how to end a show and leading to an ending. So I think Succession was always going to be leading towards an ending. And if you don't watch Succession, I think given where the show is and the premise of it all, I can see Jesse leading towards an ending, whether it's going to be season 4 or season 5. I never thought this was going to be a season 6, 7, 8 kind of show. So Jesse was always leading towards an ending. He just didn't know how it was going to end. And that's perfectly fair. It's a TV show. Same thing for Breaking Bad. Vince Gilligan famously was like, I didn't know how the death of... Oh, spoiler alert.
Wait, for what show?
Breaking Bad.
Okay. All right.
He didn't know how the ending of Breaking Bad was going to be about, specifically like the finale in terms of like guns and bullets and everything. It's like, I didn't know how Walt was going to meet his end. Yeah. Again, fair, but that's more so how it ends, not it is ending. I think Vince could tell everybody that season 5 was always going to be kind of the end, or they were at least building towards season 5 being the end. That's why they split it up into 2 parts. Yeah. He just didn't know how they were going to execute it. And that's fair. The execution of the ending can be leading up to filming date, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's always inconclusive, especially as a writer and as a thinker, creative in general. It's kind of hard to think of these hard endings. Yeah. But
I've already announced my final season and my show hasn't even started.
So it's just it came off weird to me that they're not even thinking about how this show is going to end. Granted, I know it's a TV show. Things are always evolving, but hopefully they're thinking of a general, arc for this TV show. And I'm the same guy who said like, I don't mind that. I didn't mind the sequel trilogy didn't have a fucking plan. And that's not me being a hypocrite now, but I'm just saying in terms of the sequel trilogy, there's a big difference. The sequel trilogy was built on it being a sequel trilogy. They had these 3 creatives, and I knew that, hey, JJ's going to do what he needs to do. Ryan is going to use what JJ wrote to create his idea. Yeah. And then so-and-so, whoever did 9, was going to use what Ryan did to create that. And even if the sequel trilogy didn't have a necessary plan, all someone had to do was look at the movie prior to that, in this case, Last Jedi, and continue on for that. Because I think Last Jedi really follows Force Awakens beautifully, and TROS, in my opinion, doesn't really do that. But that doesn't mean like it needed a plan to be successful. They just need to like, work in tandem closer. But that's why we have somebody like John and Dave working together.
They were also aware that, the third movie is the last movie.
Exactly. Yeah, they were aware. It's a good point. Yeah, it's like sequel trilogy, they had the advantage of being like, hey, it's a trilogy, which means there's 3 finite things. We know 3 is going to be an ending. Again, it comes down to executing that ending. There's a difference between knowing your ending and executing it. Sequel trilogy, they knew they were going to end at 3 because it's a trilogy. They just didn't know how to execute it, and it showed. This one, though, we don't know what the Mandalorian is. Is it, people keep saying it's a serialized show. It is an Adventure of the Week show. No, it's not. Like they stopped doing that after season 1. Season 2 kind of had a full-on narrative.
Yeah, it was pretty through line with
it was pretty through
Gideon.
Lines. Season 3 seemed to be kind of a through line in terms of Mandalorian culture, saving Mandalore. They're going to have some, they're going to have their adventures of the week in terms of like, as we know, some people are really hitting up Navarro, as we see in the trailers. So Mando and the crew, maybe some other Mandalorians, have to help save Navarro. That's going to happen in an episode, of course. But the through line is about like Mandalorians and digging into the Mandalore culture's past and how they can move beyond that. And hopefully how Din can himself move beyond Mando culture in more ways than one. So we'll see. It just came off very interesting. How did you take this news in terms of no ending in sight?
Well, I feel like it's tricky. I mean, granted, just going off my personal experience of crafting a show.
Okay.
Obviously, I don't have every finite detail locked in. I don't have, as much as like I have fun writing up a number of episode titles in a certain order because I have an idea of the overarching journey. I don't know, like, how every individual episode is going to go, but I know the through line. I know how each season goes. I've told you as much.
Mm-hmm.
I know how it definitively ends. I know where each character goes. In terms of just like, the whole idea we were talking about earlier with taking Grogu out and bringing him back. That's very much like if I undid what happens at the end of a certain season in a couple episodes. It's not, it doesn't hit the same as how I've pitched the whole series for you going forward. So it's on, like, again, you don't have to know how the entire thing rolls. That could be part. That's honestly part of the fun. Even I'm on season 1 right now. I don't have every episode written, but I have a through line. I know how it's gonna go, and I think that leaves the door open for creativity. So you're not just like super locked in of just like we have to do this. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have certain points where you have to do this and this, but the way we get there is open, and you can have fun with it. I think it aids with your creativity, so you don't get tired of that very thing you're creating, because if you reach burnout on a series, that can be quite negative. Didn't that happen on Game of Thrones with the creators? They were kind of just like tired at a point.
It felt like it. I think I don't think they ever admitted it, but like, yeah, they reached kind of like creative burnout by the end of after season 6, really. Like season 7 and 8 were kind of like they were away from the source material in a larger fashion, and even though they had a kind of an ending in mind, how they got there was very messy and not the best.
Yeah. So, if you want to like keep things and I know they love Star Wars and they love these characters they've made. I feel like you want to have at least a ballpark of what your definitive ending is, and you can see how long it'll take you to get there. Like again, I have an overarching goal. Main story, it's good against evil. Gotta defeat the evil. I know when we do. I know what the characters got to go through to get there. And so by knowing what they go through in the journey, I know how long it'll take. So it'd be like, all right, so this season we'll get about this much. This season this much. Then we'll get here, and then we can finish it off. If they don't know that they're like, I don't know if they have an idea if they want like Din to rule Mandalore, or if they wanted to just be that badass bounty hunter for all time. whether they know or not. But if they do, I feel like you have to have some idea
Yeah,
of the character growth, right?
it's interesting because I finally found the quote, and the idea that we just said there in terms of Din ruling Mandalore. These are things fans have been thinking about. So it has to be something that they've always been thinking about since day one in terms of Din in his leadership position. Is that coming sooner than later? If you have no ending in mind, it might be coming later than we expect, if that's even a thing. Because I can see Din, because Din right now is not fit to be a leader in the slightest.
No.
He can't even figure out himself first, and I've been saying this since season one. He needs to figure out himself. He needs to go into a mind to find himself first. But I finally found the quote. So he says, the question was, do you have an ending in mind? And he says, no, I don't. I think the beauty of this is that the season is that it's a middle chapter of a much larger story, period. I think that alone right there is very interesting. Middle chapter, does that mean season 6 could be a good ending for the show? I wouldn't be upset at season 6, right? Like,
that's what I'm doing.
5 seasons, 6 seasons is pretty common, right?
That is a nice run show, and and granted we're only averaging like 8 episodes per season.
8 episodes, yeah.
I mean, it's 48 episodes in total. For 6 seasons, not bad.
Not bad. And I think most shows, like my favorite show ever, The Americans, ended with 6 seasons. Better Call Saul, 5 seasons. Game of Thrones was 8. Like, of course, they have longer episodes, so it's like 6 seasons makes sense for me. Hopefully, a bit longer. Season 7, season 8, that gets a bit like, okay, where are we going, kind of thing. But he says, and though we'll have resolution over time with these characters, which is good to hear. I think that how these characters fit into the larger scope and scale. But it's not like there's a finale that we're building to that I have in mind. That was a big pull quote that people got upset about. There's no finale in mind, which again, it's not the most comforting thing to hear, but I kind of get it in terms of execution. If he doesn't know how he's going to execute a finale, that makes sense. We're too early on, but hopefully I want him to be thinking that there is going to be a finale in the future. But he does say here, on the contrary, I love for these stories to go on and on. And so these characters potentially could be with us for a while. And I really love telling stories in their voice. I love the way the adventures unfold. And I'm looking forward to doing much more. Which, as a creative, he likes writing these characters, which is fine.
Yeah.
But again, this idea of them going on, that's cool. But give me a conclusion. And then we can continue their stories on and on in our minds, in books, in comics, etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. Let me pose you a question.
Sure.
What do you think is a big level of stakes right now with Mando?
Stakes? I think it's all personal for me. The personal stakes are the biggest stakes of all for Mandalore, for Din, and the future of the show. That's for me. Out of there's nothing like Mandalore is like the biggest stake of it all. I don't think so. We haven't even seen Mandalore. It's already ravaged, right?
Yeah,
that we know, and that's just as a city has to be healed. But in order for that city to be healed, the character doing the healing needs to heal himself. So I think the biggest stakes of all have to be Din. Mythologically, just really him delving into his subconscious as this male fatherly figure towards Grogu. Because now that he abandoned his calling to give him to the Jedi, that was his mission for 2 seasons now, to give him to the Jedi. Now, Din, you have to succumb to your fatherly role. Spoiler alert for The Last of Us. I'm kind of going to say something here. But this is Joel post, saving Ellie from David in the game. It's Joel is now fulfilling his fatherly role. Yeah. And now you're in the summer chapter of the game. You're in the last level of the game. And you're really trying to be that fatherly figure to Ellie. So you're giving her a choice of what she wants to do with her future. So I really hope Din grapples with what it means to be a father for Grogu, and what it means to be a father in general, and what it means to be united with Grogu. Because they've been united all series long, but they haven't really been together because he kept trying to say take her Ahsoka or take her Jedi. Even halfway late in the game of season 2, it took him to the penultimate episode for him to remove his helmet because that's how much Grogu meant to him. Yeah. But again, even him connecting with Grogu has to come second to him reaffirming with himself. That is going to be my biggest thing for this season. It's the biggest personal stakes.
Mhm.
What is he going to learn about himself in this season? I'm very excited to see that.
Now,
what do you think? Yeah.
Well, I think ultimately when I was questioning the idea of stakes, I think I was like really thinking about the idea of like what's the worst case scenario that could happen to Din in this time.
What do you think?
Well, I feel like it's already happened.
I'm about to say losing Grogu, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Whether he left on his own accord or he's been kidnapped, it's been done. How many times could we do that again before it's just like, all right, well, he'll get him eventually.
Yeah, I think losing Grogu is the worst thing that could possibly happen to you.
And we kind of already like hit that real quick. I mean, it was like it was a through point in season 2. It was something I even was like predicting.
That's a great point, Nathan. So,
but like, what we have like a big stake things that happen that will shake up Din's world, because I mean, he's already kind of like, he got like, kind of disgraced by his creed, but he's on his way to go fix that.
And that's a great thing to ask. That's
Carl Weathers. Kill
Carl Weathers. Like, no, we lost a friend.
His allies. Yeah,
yeah.
like, but like, I'm talking about like the deepest connection he has.
Is Grogu.
And granted, I like Grief Karga, but
I think we're hitting home. We're hitting Din's home in Mandalore. I think that's what's exciting. But again, even though we haven't seen Mando or Mandalore as a whole, I think the stakes for this season are like, trying to revitalize Mandalore. So I think his biggest fear is like possibly maybe just losing his home, losing another home in Mandalore, losing the armor, maybe losing his identity. Is that his biggest fear? I think it's going to be more personal. So I think his biggest stakes are like losing his personal mission, his personal creed. That's what he's been raised upon for 30 plus years now.
Just more internal struggle.
And then outside of that, the season's teasing up like there's a bigger threat. Whether that means like the threat of the Empire. Granted, that has no stakes to Din because Din doesn't give a fuck about that. But so I think
they'll be the First Order eventually.
They will, but I don't think that's personal stakes for Din.
Yeah. So is getting him back? Is he even in this season?
We're gonna get a great prison break, a la Crimes of Grindelwald. So we'll see.
I feel like this man's gonna get 5 minutes in this season.
Probably.
Oh boy. Well,
that's it.
That's all I have to add.
That's all we have to add. Yeah. In general, Nathan and I are very hopefully optimistic. I think I can speak for you there.
Yeah, I mean, I would even argue I enjoy these more than any of our crew has in terms of us three. But yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hoping for the best of the stories. I would love to see like a conflict of like the idea of like taking Mandalore in the right place, and the rule, and that being like a conflict against Bo-Katan, I think is like going to be the strongest thing the season's going to offer, and I'm very excited for that.
Me too.
Again, all I want in the long run, I want Din to ride a mythic sword that nobody knew was still alive. I think that's going to be the coolest fucking imagery with him with the Darksaber.
That would be awesome. Oh, yeah, he still has to grapple with that because he's kind of new with that saber as well.
It's heavy.
So that'd be fun to watch.
Maybe Sabine will come in, give him some guidance on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Sabine or Ahsoka this season as well.
Yeah. There was like a little TV spot that came out with some Bo-Katan stuff.
Oh, cool.
So that'd be cool.
Hopefully we get some more fleshed out Bo-Katan conflict. We have to at this point because she's dominating the marketing for season 3. So, one of my pet peeves, criticisms of the season 2 finale was that we had so much good potential between Bo and Din that dissipated with the whole Moff Gideon of it all and the Darksaber of it all and the Luke of it all. So hopefully we get some good Bo-Katan versus Din, who are still ideologically very different people. Even though they might be united in the case of saving Mandalore or whatever happens in season 3, they could be united. They look united in certain spots, but I want them to be ideologically different and have some conflict that they have to handle. Again, these internal struggles that I'm excited for. And in general, for these interviews, even though John and Dave haven't been saying the best things to fans this season or these past few weeks in terms of like building up hype, people are kind of questioning them at this point a little bit, at least from the feedback I've been seeing in my feed.
Mhm.
I just think that comes from them not being the best at like, in-depth interviews. Some of my favorite interviews postseason or preseason come from like a John Kasdan from Willow. I'm biased because I love Willow, but I think John delivered some excellent interviews postseason in terms of like what they were thinking about with these character arcs and the finality of the show itself with the 3-volume tease.
Absolutely.
So I just think, they're great people, but just certain interviews, they're not saying the right things to people. So it just happens.
Yeah.
But either way, I think a lot of people are very excited. So are we. Can't wait to dive into Mandalore back on Wednesday already. Man, March is going to be crazy.
Oh,
doubling
boy.
up. But yeah, that's about it.
Where can they find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at HarrisEV9. I just saw Cocaine Bear. I'm going to tweet out my reaction to that after this episode because I forgot. But in short, I loved it. It was a very fun theater experience. I was in tears at points. It was hilarious. And this March, man, very exciting month for movies. In terms of award season, the SAG Awards are tonight. So we could be looking at more sweeps for Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm excited about that. Last of Us comes out tonight. Nathan and I will be watching that. We'll be tweeting about that. We'll be talking about it on Micah Batee later this week. So geared up for that.
Yeah, you can hear about that over on at _ Nathan Rojas. However, I would recommend you more so follow at _ Time Blazer, making a show called Time Blazer. Really exciting. Just dropped a new character today. Surprise.
Great character design. Yeah.
Yeah, fun stuff. More time shenanigans. So yeah, if you guys are interested in that, it's an animated series. Make sure you check that out. But if you enjoyed this podcast specifically, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and already ring the bell so you don't miss future episodes of Hyperspace Hype and reviews of The Bad Batch and The Mandalorian. That being said, hope you have a great day and may the Force be with you always.
Bye.